And welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. And I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. What a way to start a week with
seriously.
an action-packed hour of Sunday morning news clips.
But the good news is that Chuck Todd is still with us for now. He is leaving soon, but the show was not preempted and he was not replaced. So that is the good news.
It's great news. And as always, go to usefulidiots.substack.com or usefulidiots.locals.com to sign up and get bonus content and support the show. Keep it going. And like the stream.
Yeah, like the stream. Someone said you look regal, Aaron. I do think you do. That chair gives you a very regal.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's the last day of my birthday month. So make sure you like the stream extra hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. Katie, is your microphone selected?
It is selected. I was wondering, do you not hear this?
Okay, yeah, it is. Yes,
yeah.
It is.
All right, I just moved it closer, yeah.
Okay, and let me just tweet this out.
Yeah, this is, you guys get to see how the sausage is made. I haven't worn glasses I did wear glasses, right? Was it last week? Yeah, when I had really bad allergies and I wore glasses, yeah.
Yeah, last week was a special episode of Katie's Sunglasses Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It was a hit. People liked it.
People did like it, but it was a little annoying because people coming in late were like, "Why is Katie wearing sunglasses?" So I felt like I had to make a couple of announcements throughout. Yeah.
Yeah, it was distracting.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
And people have commented on my my top. It's actually a dress, but thank you for the compliments. Yeah. You know, this is a dress that I bought when I went to my friend's wedding in California, and all of they lost my luggage temporarily. So imagine going as a best friend of the bride, BFB, and not having luggage. So I went to Target, as some people like to call it. Bought a bunch of dresses. I actually didn't wear this one to the wedding, but I kept it. So there's the behind story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shout out to Target.
Yeah.
That sounds like a nice small business that's worth supporting.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All righty. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it with some Chuckster.
Yes.
Okay. So someone says it looks like you have angel's wings, which is true. Now that someone said that, I can't unsee the wings.
Did I have angel wings?
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yes.
All right. Thank you for the super chat from Operation Gladio plus CNN equals something. Yeah. All righty.
Sunday morning.
Let's go to Chuck.
Good Sunday morning. So our democracy faces yet another stress test, one arguably that it hasn't faced since Reconstruction. In 2020, the country did face sort of an early pretest, if you will, whether an authoritarian-minded leader with an extremely devoted base of supporters would leave office voluntarily, allowing for a peaceful transfer of power. Well, the answer on that test was we barely passed it. Now, criminal charges against Donald Trump have again put the nation on a collision course between partisan politics and the rule of law. In a new 60-page superseding indictment unsealed this week in the classified documents case, special counsel Jack Smith accused the former president of a cover-up after Trump allegedly tried to get his staff to delete Mar-a-Lago security footage, which had been subpoenaed by the FBI.
So I've lost track at this point, but
Doc Talk.
Trump has caught another case having to do with classified documents.
Right. And this time we know that he tried to get rid of something.
Yeah, he asked them to delete some security footage at Mar-a-Lago. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd forgotten even about this case. That's how boring I find this whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's back.
Yeah, wow. You guys really should like the stream because we sat through so many clips of basically the same stuff, which is a lot of work and trauma for us. And on top of that, we're gonna still make it good for you.
I mean, basically, the most exciting thing about this whole story to me is that one of the documents that Trump reportedly mishandled was a document about how the U.S. should attack Iran.
Right.
And Trump was saying that it was the Pentagon that wanted him to attack Iran. He resisted. Other people said differently. But regardless, I think that's the story here, that the U.S. has, plans to for attacking Iran. But no one cares about that because it's about Trump. All we care about is, all we're supposed to care about is like whether he mishandled them or not whether or not we should be attacking Iran or drawing up plans to attack Iran.
Right.
And again, we're not going to see that issue being discussed in all this.
Right. Of course not. The substance.
The indictment also charges Trump with an additional count of possessing classified documents, specifically a battle plan related to attacking Iran, which Trump allegedly showed to two people helping former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows write a book. That took place during a meeting at his Bedminster Golf Club. So in total, Trump now faces 70.
Again, can we hear more about this plan to attack Iran? Can we get a little more detail?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's true. They haven't really focused on that, of course. Yeah.
Whether that's a good idea, whether we want to be attacking Iran, why are we planning to attack Iran? Can we talk about that? No. It's a footnote.
24 felony counts overall between state and federal indictments so far. And a new federal indictment is likely this coming week, stemming from the special counsel investigation into his efforts to stay in power after the 2020 election. And an additional indictment out of the state of Georgia is expected later in August related to tampering with those election results. So over the next year, we're going to see the legal calendar for Mr. Trump collide with the political calendar for America. In October is when it begins. Trump faces a New York State trial on civil fraud charges. Now, Trump personally is not required to appear for civil trials in this case. On January 15th, it's another civil trial that just happens to coincide with the day of the Iowa caucuses. That civil trial is involving writer E. Jean Carroll. It's an additional defamation case against him. On January 29th, a week after.
This reminds me of Oprah, like you get a prize, you get a prize. Chuck's like, you get a case, you get a case, you get a case. To the media, just doling out Trump cases for them to cover nonstop and obsessively.
Yeah. Look under your seat, guys.
Yeah. So many cases.
So many cases.
A week before the contest in Nevada, yet another civil trial begins. This one is a federal class action suit that accuses Trump and the Trump Organization of duping vulnerable investors into buying into a pyramid scheme. And then 3 weeks after.
Can you imagine that? Trump trying to dupe people into buying into a pyramid scheme? No way.
That's not the Trump I know and love.
Super Tuesday, when a dozen states vote, on March 25th, the criminal case is supposed to kick off in New York, where Trump is charged with falsifying business records to cover up an affair shortly before the 2016 election. And then
that's the dumb case. Come on. We all know that case is just.
Yeah, the Georgia case is the good one. Why don't we
Georgia case?
Yeah. Georgia case really seems legit.
Quite plausible.
Yeah.
He did try to overturn the election and find votes to do so. Fair enough. January 6th, again, I could see it there, but this one in New York, come on. Everyone knows it's a joke. Even when it dropped, MSNBC was so excited, obviously. Right. This is the first time a president's being charged, but yet they even had to admit that case was weak. That case was weak sauce.
Weak sauce. Weak cake.
Weak cake.
2 months before the Republican convention begins, on May 20th, the special counsel's criminal trial into Trump's handling of classified documents is scheduled to begin. Now, I say scheduled because the additional charges announced this week is likely to delay the start of that. So the potential trials into election interference federally and in Georgia, they're not even on the books. And here's what we already know so far. 5 trials, 74 felony counts. And it poses this question. Is the Republican Party really going to go through with this and nominate Donald Trump with all of this going on? We're staring at a Republican nominee who is desperate to postpone these trials until after the election, because if he wins, they go away, and a Democratic nominee who's over the age of 80. And ask yourself, do we really think the status quo is going to hold when all of this collides in the spring of 24? It is pretty clear from voters that they don't want this rematch.
Which is why we have, of course, had Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy on our show. Whoops, no, we haven't. The status quo can't hold, but let's not have people on who are running against Biden.
And Cornel West, obviously.
And Cornel West, of course, right. Thank you for reminding me that, yeah.
I mean, they will have any Republican on who's running against Trump, but it won't do the same.
All the time. They have him on all the time, right.
Yeah, but not any of Biden's opponents on the left.
Good point. In fact, just literally just yesterday, they had Sununu on, they had Asa Hutchinson on, they had Chris Christie on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sprinkled. Oh, and the other guy, Hurd.
Hurd, that's right. Who I think we're going to hear from. But there's a parallel question that Chuck missed, which is that, he says, like, are Republicans really going to go through with this and nominate Trump despite all these cases? But there's another question, which is the Biden DOJ really going to go through with all of these cases against the presidential frontrunner of a rival party? Which, when bad guy states do that, we say that they're banana republics, they're not democracies. And, not that I think all these cases against Trump are baseless. Some of them, I think there's some substance to it, but it is just true. It's just true. Like, both things can be true, that Trump did some illicit things, but also there has been an effort to persecute him and to use lawfare against him. The biggest example was the Russia investigation, when he was framed as a Russian asset, and years were devoted to that, and years were devoted to trying to use that to end his presidency. And Trump supporters don't forget that. And at least pose that question, Chuck. Like, is it worth, given that background, is it worth us going through now all these new cases, given the background, given the preferential treatment that Joe Biden has gotten via his son Hunter, who now recently got a plea deal that is said to be lenient by Republicans. And certainly there's been a different standard of justice there. But of course, Chuck can ask that question because he's in on it.
Yeah. I also think it's funny because, part of the deal among presidents as they come into power is that they don't go after the last guy in office. Like, Obama didn't do that with George Bush, and there was definitely stuff he could have done with Bush. So this is kind of unprecedented in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, Obama not only had Bush who tortured people, but also Bush who invaded Iraq illegally.
Right.
But Obama said, I want to look forward, not backward.
Right.
And that was
we tortured some folks. Yeah.
Tortured some folks. Yeah.
So I think it's funny because it's like the precedent of being polite to war criminals who came in before you is being kind of eroded.
Tradition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tradition, yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's go back to the videotape.
Percent of voters don't want Biden to run again. 60% of voters don't want Trump to run again.
I'm sorry, I have to point out again. I have to point out again that it is crazy that those numbers are out there. 70% of voters think Biden shouldn't run. 60% of voters think Trump shouldn't run, and they don't ever have on people running against Biden from the Democratic Party or the Green Party. And, I get a little annoyed when I say this and people start commenting on RFK or Marianne Williamson. I don't really care what you think about these people. Don't you get that the media should not be blocking out people running? Like, your candidate, someone who you like, could be running. Are you going to want them to black them out? It's just so stupid and unprincipled. Anyway, sorry. A little pet peeve of mine.
That is a really crazy number. I didn't realize it was that high. But those are huge majorities that don't want either of the
I know, it really is crazy.
Major candidates.
Yep. So anytime that someone puts a comment in about how much RFK sucks or Marianne Williamson sucks, in the context of my saying they should be covered, you're owning yourself. It's a self-own. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Look, Aaron, you've been very openly critical of RFK recently, and that's fine. But that's not that doesn't mean, because I don't like this person, because they suck, the media should not be covering them. And thank God they're not covering them. Just be principled, everyone. All right, sorry. Okay, this is my favorite part of this clip, though.
Indictments. And yet a Trump-Biden rematch appears to be what the voters are going to get. It's not clear that the general public fully appreciates that the two parties are going down this road. Last night, campaigning in Erie, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump escalated things. He threatened Republicans who do not pursue investigations applying impeachment of President Biden.
They sit back and they say, they have other priorities. We have to look at other things. Any Republican that doesn't act on Democrat fraud should be immediately primaried. and get out. Out. And they've broken the veil by indicting me with this ridiculous. These are ridiculous indictments.
So, okay, Chuck Todd frames this as a constitutional crisis, right? He says like we haven't seen this since Reconstruction, right? He says our democracy faces a stress test it hasn't faced since Reconstruction. Why is this such a stress test? Like, I don't like Trump, but he literally just said that they should primary certain Republicans. Why is that unconstitutional? Yeah. And what I mean, if Trump wins, obviously he'll pardon himself. If not, there will be consequences. And either one of those outcomes, neither one of those constitutes a constitutional crisis. Like, those are legal processes.
Yeah. And Trump also said lock her up. So he was calling for his opponents to be in prison for a while now. So it's not even anything new.
Right.
And Trump, Chuck just has Trump fever. He has Trump derangement syndrome. It's a tough thing to shake. We're watching it in real time. How to deal with the case of Trump derangement syndrome. And every corporate media pundit basically has it.
Yep. It goes, it's true. I wonder how we could heal them.
Well, we can start maybe with former White House spokesperson, Jen Psaki.
Jen Psaki, yes. This is actually a very good moment of contrast. So we just had Chuck Todd fearing about this non-existent constitutional crisis. If you're feeling anxious because the Chuckster really speaks to you, don't worry. We have a countervailing voice coming from Jen Psaki. Get ready for this Psaki bomb. I think we're all going to feel a lot better after we hear her.
This week, there's no question, but overall, two big things stuck out to me. First of all, this week was an extraordinary reminder of just how much legal trouble the former president is in. I mean, it really is something to have everyone on edge, all eyes glued on the courthouse in Washington, D.C., watching what Jack Smith is going to do, waiting for an indictment in the investigation into his attempt to overturn the 2020 election, only to have a new separate superseding indictment drop in the investigation into his mishandling of classified documents.
I love when they say that all eyes are on the Washington, D.C. courtroom. Like, who's she talking about? Like,
right.
Most people don't really care about this case. I mean, and MSNBC,
all MSNBC eyes, yeah.
All MSNBC eyes, absolutely. But beyond that, it's kind of an exaggeration.
All happening within the span of hours. You really can't make this stuff up sometimes. And to put a dollar figure on this mountain of legal trouble, just last night, the Washington Post came out with a new piece detailing the more than $40 million Trump's political group has spent on legal costs to defend not just Trump, but his advisors and others in the first half of this year alone. The first half of this year alone. That's $40 million from Trump supporters across the country, footing legal bills for him and his circle. So just to put a very fine tooth comb on this, $40 million of the $5, $10, and $20 donations from Trump supporters across the country has gone to foot Trump's legal bills and the legal bills of people who helped him. One thing's for sure, those bills are going to keep piling up. This
is funny because let's say you're a Trump supporter and you're hearing that your money is going directly to his legal defense. Like, all she's doing is basically fundraising for him. Like, if you like Trump, you're like, wow, my money really makes a difference helping this guy fight against his persecution. You know, like, I'm fighting for his freedom and the freedom of this, you know, that's on the line here. Like, do you think people are going to be like, oh, man, I thought my money was going to go to mailers and lawn signs and yard signs. But now that I know it's going to his legal defense, I'm not going to give him any more money.
Maybe there'll be a new January 6th, like stop the steal of Trump supporters' money to his legal defense.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
They're going to storm Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Storm Mar-a-Lago. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go back to Jen.
Superseding indictment in the documents case contains 3 additional charges for Trump, 1 additional defendant, and a ton of additional details. Two of the charges here center on obstruction, which we can see in a particularly jarring passage that says Trump, his aide Walt Nauta, and the newly indicted Carlos de Oliveira requested that another Trump employee, quote, delete security camera footage at the Mar-a-Lago club to prevent the footage from being provided to a federal grand jury. You can't spell it out much more clearly than that. And why? According to this brand new defendant, Carlos de Oliveira, who is set to be arraigned tomorrow, is because, quote, the boss wanted the server deleted. That is right here.
Also, how are you going to flub that line? The boss wanted the server deleted. Come on, Jen.
On page 29 in the indictment.
That's kind of funny. Control, Alt, delete.
Yes, that's the only interesting part of this whole clip, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, again, does anybody care? Does anybody care that about like all this comes down to handling classified documents, which we're supposed to worship as sacrosanct, when really we're supposed to care that Trump endangered our plans to bomb Iran and whatever else was in those documents. Like, it's one of these cases, again, where the good guys are the national security state bureaucracy.
Of course.
And Trump's worst crimes are supposedly impeding that bureaucracy, not all the other horrible things he did. And we're supposed to really, really care. And again,
also, what about keep going.
Just like the parallel too, like with Russiagate, like Hillary Clinton was said to have deleted all of these emails that she improperly kept on a server, which I didn't really care about as a story.
Enough with the goddamn emails,
yeah. But again, in her case, she got off with no charges whatsoever. Now Trump is not only catching cases, but he's catching more and more charges, and there is just a blatant double standard.
Right.
And it's impossible to ignore that.
I also wanted, just in case, our haters often like to clip us and to smear us. So I did say that Trump would pardon himself, and someone in the chat was like, no, the court's already decided that a president can't pardon himself. And that's not actually true. It was the Department of Justice that made the decision, and Trump's self-pardon could be challenged as unconstitutional. And it's a gray area, but it would be adjudicated. So again, not a constitutional crisis. It would just be ruled on. Okay. You're welcome, everyone. No, let it never be said that I don't take comments seriously. Okay.
I think we all know who the boss is. That's pretty clear. And giving orders to delete.
Yeah, Bruce Springsteen.
Delete security footage is a totally innocent, not at all criminal thing to do, right? It sounds totally fine.
So fun.
The other new charge here centers on what is called willful retention of national defense information, which basically means he held on to documents that he wasn't supposed to have. And in the case of that now infamous Iran document, showed them to people he wasn't supposed to show them to. Now,
that Iran document that we're never going to get into.
Yeah.
I know all of this can be a lot to follow. An indictment in the election interference case still feels imminent. Trump's lawyers had a meeting with the special counsel's office this week in which they were told to expect one. And then out of nowhere comes this superseding indictment in Florida. Oh, well, nowhere to all of us. Which brings me to the other lesson of the week.
Guys, are you ready for this? This is the really teachable moment from the week.
It might not feel like it, or we can't necessarily see it, or we don't know the details of what's happening. The justice system is always working. Every time Jack Smith's team makes an announcement, there seems to be a few eye-popping details that no one was tracking beforehand. Some of them sound very mob-like to me. There's also a lot going on behind the scenes. As this week showed, we have no idea how much work the Department of Justice is doing until news breaks. But in the meantime, the work is still very much happening. So however slowly it might seem sometimes, and there are many times it feels slow, the wheels of justice are constantly turning to hold people accountable, and that's important to remember. This week was a big reminder of that.
Okay, guys, don't worry. Our justice system is working. Jen herself, to her credit, went over a couple weeks ago the dual tier justice system that we have, and how corporate crimes are permissible, and low level criminal things like selling pot are not. But now we're supposed to believe that we have one justice system and then it works.
That is old news. Yeah. The 2 tiers, old news. The system works. Everything's working great.
Update. Yeah.
Trust the system. The wheels of justice are constantly turning. Yes. What a takeaway. And that's what they said too during the Mueller investigation, how wonderful our institutions are. Trump was attacking our institutions. We have to worship our institutions, the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA. And what a great new reminder of how wonderful our system is now that we have these new cases. That's the point of all this stuff.
Right.
It's not to challenge Trump in any meaningful way. It's just to entrench the institutions that are annoyed by his existence and want somebody who's a slicker steward of the U.S. war machine. That's exactly, that's pretty much what it always comes back to.
This is a good comment, by the way. I had nader heard this quote from Ralph Nader, apparently. Crime in the streets, not crime in the suites.
That's right. That is right. Absolutely. Okay. Well,
this is a good.
Another institutionalist is a guy named Chuck Rosenberg. He's an MSNBC analyst. Really boring.
Wait, I think aren't we going to? Is this next? Isn't the Coons? Oh, you're right. Sorry, my bad. We moved the order around. Yeah.
Really boring guy. Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. FBI official, and he's going to talk about a different case, the Hunter Biden case, which
good one.
Is newly back making headlines because there was a hearing this week where the judge was supposed to accept Hunter's plea deal, but then the prosecutors and Hunter's defense team couldn't agree on whether or not the deal makes Hunter Biden immune from future charges. Hunter Biden's team, said yes, the deal does. The prosecutor said no. And so this case is now in limbo.
And also they keep pointing out that it's a Trump judge, right, overseeing this.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't a Trump judge, then it would have been a Biden judge.
Or an Obama judge.
Or an Obama judge, sure. But right. You're right. So, or a Clinton judge or a Bush judge, honestly, depending on how long the person was in power. But it's going to be one or the other. So it would have looked bad the other way too.
Yeah. And what they leave out when they say that this was a Trump prosecutor, so Hunter Biden was not given preferential treatment. You had two whistleblowers from the IRS recently testify that Hunter Biden was given preferential treatment, and that this prosecutor, David Weiss, even basically said that he didn't, that this case wasn't fully up to him. The implication being that somebody above him was rigging the case, and that part just gets ignored in all this. Right. Even though one of those whistleblowers was a Democrat, that just gets ignored because, again, we don't hold Democratic candidates and their families, associates, the same standards that we hold Trump. That's just the rule of the game. Anyway, here is Chuck Rosenberg.
I want to get your understanding of what happened in that Delaware courtroom with the Hunter Biden plea agreement. It fell apart under some basic questioning. Does that mean this is a pretty weak agreement?
No, it doesn't mean that. It does mean that attorneys on both sides perhaps didn't do a good enough job of being very clear with each other and with the judge about what that plea agreement, that contract was.
Here, this feels kind of basic.
It's kind of basic, but
is it freezing for you guys?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But it happens. Most plea agreements go through without a hitch. This one had a hitch. It hit a snag. It's remediable. It's relatively easy to fix if Mr. Biden still wants to plead guilty. And by the way, Chuck, I think it's in his best interest to do so. The two sides are going to hammer this out.
Uh-oh. Is this guy a Trumpy or what? He's saying that he thinks it's best for Biden to plead guilty.
Yeah, because they don't want to have this case hanging over them, especially as they're, shouting constantly about Trump breaking the law and being an affront to our values. It's awkward that Hunter Biden is still going through all these different cases.
Right.
And they don't want that one to be active.
Right. And I don't think we can consider Chuck Rosenberg a Trumpy.
Certainly not. No.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Well, to get to our next clips, we need to just do a little recap of what happened this week with Mitch McConnell, the Republican Senate leader who had some sort of incident where he froze up as he was speaking.
Yeah.
So let's watch that clip.
And a string of
So we get it. That's what happened.
Yeah. Now he freezes. He probably honestly, and I'm not even making fun of him, he may have had a stroke or something at that moment, like a TIA. But what's interesting is that we actually were going to show this clip last week's Thursday Throwdown, and Aaron and I were kind of like, is this too mean? Is this too mean to do? But then I realized, you know what? If it's too mean to do because it's too punching down, then that person probably shouldn't be in power.
We certainly live in a gerontocracy. That is very clear, as we're gonna
in a second.
We're gonna see more from that. But here for now is Chuck Todd.
One more thing I will say, though, in his favor, is that Mitch McConnell handled it better than other people because he's so frozen constantly that I think it took him longer to look for us to realize he was frozen than it would have for a more animated person. Yeah.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the Chuckster asking Senator Chris Coons about this.
NBC affiliates in preparing for the Sunday show every week. Number one question they asked me was about age. And how old is too old to serve? The Mitch McConnell thing was very hard to watch. I think we're all hopeful that that's something that's not going to happen again for him. But is it time to consider? We have age minimums in the Constitution that frankly look kind of absurd in hindsight. Should there be a constitutional amendment for an age maximum, whether 75 or 80, to apply to the entire federal government for political appointees or elected officials?
Look, I think the best test of whether or not someone is really capable of fulfilling their constitutional duty is an election. Having
6 years, though.
in front
and
of
a
an
senator,
election,
it's 6 years. A lot can happen when you're in 6 year period in your health, especially when you're in your late 70s or early 80s.
That's right. I mean, I don't disagree. Look, I talked to Minority Leader McConnell after the incident this week where he froze in a TV interview. He seemed fine.
You confident in him? Do you feel like he's going to be running the show here?
I feel like he's going to continue to be the Republican leader through the rest of this Congress. And what happens after that, I don't know.
That's such a dig. He asked if he's confident in him to be an effective leader. And he's like, I'm confident he's going to stay in power.
Yeah. A ringing endorsement.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. He's like, I'm confident in the status quo, the gerontocracy, and people putting personal relationships and process and decorum over actual effective governing. Yeah.
Well, we're so blessed that our gerontocracy is bipartisan. So here this week was Dianne Feinstein, who has had serious health issues. She's over the age of 90. And she was asked to vote on a new military budget, $823 billion, and made the mistake of speaking before her vote. And here you can hear in the background, and we'll listen to the clip, her aides and colleagues just telling her, just Dianne, just say aye, just say yes. Don't talk.
Say aye. Pardon me? Aye.
Say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Just say I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a democracy.
Yeah. Seriously.
And again, the reason why she's still even in that seat, apparently, and this is one of the theories, and I think it's plausible, is that if she steps down, as she really should, given her health issues and her age, then her seat would be vacant, and it's expected that Governor Newsom of California would appoint Barbara Lee because he said he would appoint a black woman to any new vacancy. And Democrats like Nancy Pelosi don't want that because Adam Schiff wants that seat.
Right.
And if you give it now to Barbara Lee, if you point her to it, then that would help Barbara Lee in her election against Schiff for that seat. So basically, to help Schiff, they're keeping Dianne Feinstein in that chair, and it leads to awkward moments like that.
Yeah, very awkward moments. Yeah. Well, we have another age-related clip coming up. So let's go to the next clip where we have Asa Hutchinson, who is running for president as well. And here he is talking to Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation.
A lot to ask you about, but I do want to pick up on something Nikki Haley continues to raise, and this is this idea of a mental acuity test for anyone over 75. You're 72 years old. If you win the presidency, you'd be right in that range. What do you think of her concept? Do you think that's appropriate?
Well, there's a mental acuity test every time you go to Iowa and there's a town hall meeting with the questions from the voters. They do a pretty good job of assessing those issues. As a practical matter, you want a president.
Well, is that really true that the mental acuity test works? I mean, what was Mitch McConnell doing just now?
And Biden had that test when remember when he got in that fight with voters? He said,
"Oh my God, which fight? How many did he get into?" Right.
Listen, and yeah. But yeah, I guess the Iowa test, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, there's the Iowa cognition test. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying I agree necessarily with an age test or an acuity. I mean, with these tests, maybe I do, maybe I don't. I have to think about it more. But the idea that there's an acuity test already built into the system is ridiculous because we literally just saw that with Mitch McConnell. Like, no one can do anything about him. I know. That's it. I don't think we have to watch the full clip.
Okay.
I mean, despite the fact that he's so charismatic, Asa Hutchinson. Yeah.
All right. Well, Katie, remember earlier you were critical of corporate TV for not acknowledging challengers to Biden, like RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson and Cornel West. Well, I hate to prove you wrong, Katie, but of course, Chuck Todd is all over Biden's new challenger on the left, who everyone knows about. Surely you've heard of Dean Phillips.
Oh my God, I can't get his name out of my head. Yeah,
everyone knows who Dean Phillips is, right? And here is Chuck Todd asking Chris Coons about him. So Dean Phillips, apparently, I'd never heard of him before this. He's a member of Congress, and
Minnesota.
He's running for president, and of course, because he's not someone on the actual left,
right?
Chuck Todd is going to. Chuck Todd's allowed to acknowledge his existence. So
right
here is that clip.
A pretty serious member of Congress, maybe unknown. If he's sitting there on that ballot in New Hampshire,
we have to rewind this so you can hear it in all its glory. Hold on. Okay.
But Dean Phillips is a pretty serious member of Congress, maybe unknown. If he's sitting there on that ballot in New Hampshire, that doesn't have you nervous?
It does.
He literally just said he's unknown, maybe unknown. That doesn't have you nervous? Why would you be nervous about someone running with zero name recognition? Is this guy really does Chuck Todd really think this guy is the one who's going to upset everything? Well, let's hear if he's nervous.
Doesn't have me nervous, frankly. President Biden has the strongest record of legislative accomplishment since LBJ, and you're beginning to see the impact. 13 million jobs created by the private sector, 800,000 good manufacturing jobs, 35,000 infrastructure projects out there in the country. Dean Phillips can't cite anything like that.
Well, that's because Dean Phillips wasn't president, to be fair. It's a bit of an apples and oranges thing.
That's true.
It's like, how LBJ was your presidency, Dean? This makes me want to go work for Dean.
President Biden has made us stronger on the world stage. The Vilnius summit showed his agility, his capabilities, the strength with which he's helped rally NATO to the defense of Ukraine, and the strength with which he's delivered on things Trump promised, like rebuilding infrastructure.
They love to use that word strength. Biden has showed strength. And I love that they also use the term agile.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing I think of more when I see Biden than his agility. Yeah.
But is Dean Phillips like the new kind of like fake opponent for Biden to distract from his actual opponents, like RFK Jr.
Yeah,
and
probably.
and Cornel West? Like Dean Phillips doesn't have the record that Joe Biden does.
Right.
Is he he's like a fake foil?
Right.
And,
a fake foil. Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
And of course, RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson especially have positions that I strongly disagree with, but they're a challenge. They are running against him. They exist, and
people know their names.
People know names, and Chuck Todd's been ignoring them, and now all of a sudden, Dean Phillips, who's unknown, he gets thrown into the ring,
and he even acknowledges he's unknown. That's kind of the great part of it. Yeah. Yeah. He does have this to his credit. He may not have had all these amazing things because he wasn't president. He may not have those to his name, but he is the former co-owner of Talenti Gelato.
Okay. All right. Well,
you could run on that.
That sounds great. Everyone likes, or most people like gelato.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, where are we on the likes? How are we doing on the likes, Wilson? Or Aaron? Let's see. What are we?
I see 868.
That's pretty low, guys. Let's get to 900, and I'm being very generous. That's still less than half. I don't understand why I haven't trained you more.
Do you think if Dean Phillips was having a podcast, you would be a little nervous that he would be getting more likes than we were getting?
I would be nervous, yeah. I would be. Matthew Guillet, thank you for hustling the likes for me.
He's fully unknown, and he has only 3 podcast listeners, but maybe he'd be getting more likes than we are. Are you nervous about that?
He'd probably get 5. I'd be nervous that he'd get 5 likes, actually. Yeah. All right. Are we at 900 yet?
Yeah, 992. We just jumped. It's the Dean Phillips effect.
It's the Dean Phillips bump. I'm nervous now. I'm nervous by his power. All right. Let's go back.
And what's so funny, too, again, Coons is like citing Biden's policy on Ukraine as somehow a positive for Biden when it's, he's presiding over this disastrous proxy war. And this recent NATO summit was like so embarrassing for everybody because after, fighting this war over the principle of Ukraine's right to join NATO, Biden told Ukraine, sorry, you're not getting in, and we're not even going to tell you how you can get in. And Zelensky had a freak out. Zelensky had a meltdown. So it was a disaster. And Coons somehow wants to spin all this as like a show of strength.
Yeah, but of course, because the media didn't spin it as a disaster. It should have been. It was. But of course, the reason he can say that it's a show of strength and agility is precisely because people in power and people in the media, the elites in the politics and media are pretending that this was a good thing.
Well, that's why we have to hear from Dean Phillips, who I'm sure will bring
Dean's
the ruckus.
line? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's close out this clip with
cutting prescription drug prices, where Biden has delivered, gives him an incredible record to run on.
I don't know. Talenti's pretty good as a record.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? Earlier I was complaining about in the documents case with Trump that no one really talks about the actual substance of what the documents contain, which is this plan to attack Iran. But here is CBS News with a little bit of a discussion about it.
And the superseding indictment included reference to this document, which investigators had found. Previously, Donald Trump said didn't exist. Audio shows he was talking about it. What is the significance of it?
Well, charging the Iran document has a ripple effect. It undercuts the former president's public statements that he was just showing some media articles and clippings. But I think it also opens the door to the potential compromise of sources, methods, tactics, and military techniques. A war plan is a very unique document. It is a reflection of what the U.S. government believes to be the weaknesses of an adversary, in this case, Iran. It probably included intelligence from our allies in the region. So the sensitivity of this document is unique and also so important to U.S. national security.
And national security, I mean, protecting the American public is a fundamental responsibility of the American presidency.
Thanks for that, Margaret. Wow.
Did
you know that?
I feel so protected knowing that we have plans to attack Iran.
Right. Well, even that, like, it got into the substance, but only as a reflection of how this, how Trump handles national security, which is, I mean, that's sure, that's commentary worthy, but it still didn't even get into the substance of what's happening with Iran.
Absolutely. Yes.
And also, nobody who cares about Trump will ever see him as a national security threat. Nobody who likes Trump.
Yeah. And nobody, I think, who takes actual national security seriously in terms of keeping people safe will think that we're somehow safer by drawing up plans to bomb Iran. I don't think you can sort of make that leap, but what do I know? Okay. Well, let's go on to this guy's tough. This is Congressmember Dan Goldman.
Oh yeah.
Major Russiagator. He is going to speak to John Carl about this Trump case, which obviously he's very excited for.
Congressman Dan Goldman of New York, a former federal prosecutor who also served as the lead counsel in Donald Trump's first impeachment. Congressman Goldman.
Also the heir to like a billionaire's fortune, and that's how he got elected. He just used his family money to outspend everybody and buy his way into office, basically.
I don't know. It could have been his charisma, as you're going to see in a second.
Thank you for joining us. Taking a look at these new charges, these new superseding indictment from Jack Smith, how serious are they?
Well, it's very serious, less because of the additional defendant, I think, but more because it demonstrates Donald Trump's knowledge of what his conduct was and how wrong it was, and that he was trying to obstruct the investigation that he knew was ongoing. That is quintessential consciousness of guilt, which shows that he knew what he was doing was wrong. And so we already had a very detailed, devastating indictment. And now you layer on the knowledge that Trump shows about the illegality of his conduct, and it just gets worse for him.
Again, I mean, to the extent that Trump supporters are watching MSNBC, and maybe they are watching they're hate watching it, but nobody who supports Trump cares about his breaking the law because they think that he's being persecuted. And they also like that he breaks the rules.
Absolutely. He's a bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everyone loves a bad boy. Okay. I think we can skip
What's the next one?
ahead to clip number 9. Because we need to move on from some of this Trump
stuff. You don't want to see Adam Schiff?
Okay, all right, we can play Adam Schiff. Why not?
I mean, we don't have to. I just thought that you like him.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. Here's an oldie but a goodie for old time's sake. Adam Schiff, fan favorite of Useful Idiots.
Fan fave.
Now there's talk on the Republican side of maybe an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. And Adam Schiff, who famously led the first impeachment inquiry into Trump when Trump was impeached for pausing some weapon sales to Ukraine at the same time as he asked Ukraine to look into corruption by Joe Biden. Adam Schiff has some thoughts on Republicans trying to return the favor.
Before I let you go, about this impeachment inquiry that Kevin McCarthy has been floating out there. I mean, you have led one of these before, and you know the level of detail that's needed. Is your sense that he even knows what he wants to impeach the president about?
No, I mean, for a long time, it didn't appear clear that they even knew who they wanted to impeach. You know, did they want to impeach Ali Mayorkas or maybe Merrick Garland or maybe Joe Biden or maybe somebody else? They seem to be an impeachment inquiry in search of a subject and certainly in search of evidence. But what concerns me is I think McCarthy may open an impeachment inquiry because he thinks it will let off the steam with the crazies in his conference.
Which is exactly what Democrats tried to do from the moment Trump got elected. Already on his first day in office, they were talking about impeaching him. And that's what the Russia investigation was used for, to try to find any impeachable offense. First, they did that by framing him as a Russian asset. When that didn't work, then they tried to talk about impeaching him for obstructing the investigation into him being a Russian asset. And that didn't fly, but that was immediately, like when the Mueller report dropped, immediately you had people saying we should impeach.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure. And luckily, Trump gave them an out by having this phone call with Zelensky where he asked him to look into Joe Biden at the same time as he paused some weapon sales to Ukraine. And even though Zelensky said, I never felt any pressure to investigate the Bidens, I never even talked to Trump or anyone about the Bidens,
right,
except for in that phone call. And there was no linkage made between the freezing of the weapons and this request for a Biden investigation. Schiff and Democrats went full ahead with that. And the end result was helping encourage a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine, because that's when Adam Schiff got up on the House floor and said, we aid Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there.
Right, instead of
we don't have to
over
fight
here.
Russia here. And everybody in the media applauded, including in progressive media. No one, except for a few of us, pointed out how dangerous and insane that was. And then, so on top of fueling a Cold War with Russia and encouraging a fight in Ukraine with Russia, also Trump ended that impeachment with the highest approval ratings of his presidency. So that is the legacy of Adam Schiff.
It's also interesting because that's just yet another example when Zelensky was like, no, there was nothing, I didn't feel pressured. And just another example of Zelensky being used as a pawn and his agency being ignored.
Absolutely. By everybody.
Remember, it was funny when Trump was like, Zelensky said it was a perfect phone call. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on. This clip is funny. Here is Will Hurd. He is a Republican member of, he's a former Republican member of Congress, also a former official with the CIA. It's a great combo. He's running for president against Trump.
He's a Texan.
He's calling out Trump, and he wants us to focus on the real issues. And it's funny what he lists as among the concerns of average Americans. So listen to this.
You know, the last time you were here was before you were still trying to decide whether to do this or not. It happened in the week of the defamation suit, where it was ruled that Donald Trump would indeed not only defamed her, but the judge seemed to think that yes, he did rape her. We now have 74 additional criminal charges, plus that civil defamation statement from another court. None of it has mattered to Republican voters. Why?
Well, I don't know why the part of the population that supports Donald Trump, I will say this race will tighten when we get closer to an election. That's what always happens in elections. The place that it is mattering is with independents and conservative Democrats that are frustrated with Joe Biden. If the Republican Party puts Donald Trump forward as our nominee, we will give 4 more years to Joe Biden on purpose. You said in the lead-in, nobody wants to see this rematch. People are looking for something different. And here's what I'm seeing on the ground. I get asked a question, you know, when I'm in places like New Hampshire and Iowa, are my kids going to be able to have good access to good paying jobs? Is a robot going to replace my job? Are we going to win this new Cold War with the Chinese government? These are the kinds of issues.
That escalated pretty quickly. So, okay, you know, are my kids going to have good jobs? Are robots going to replace this? Are we going to win the new Cold War against China? That's what he's saying. Average people are asking him.
And worried about, Yeah.
Where is he hanging out? Like at neocon think tanks?
Right. Maybe he's hanging out with people who do like cosplay or LARPing. Chinese Cold War, new Cold War, Cold War 2.0 LARPing. Yeah.
I just have a hard time believing that your average voter is concerned about winning the Cold War against China. Because first of all, we're not even allowed to call it a Cold War.
Right. I know. I kind of appreciated that he liked that. He almost sounded like us. Or candor, like Margaret Kimberly.
Yes, the candor is appreciated.
Yeah.
All right. You know, well, this is a fun way to close the show. This week in Congress, there was a hearing about UFOs, whether we are joined in this galaxy by some other life forms. And you had a former intelligence official testifying that, yes, the U.S. government has found some UFOs and there was some non-human remains on those UFOs, and it's all a cover-up.
And by the way, if you want to hear our takes on this, it was in last week's Thursday Throwdown. But
that's right. No. Yes, which you can get at usefulidiots.substack.com. I'm personally skeptical of all this stuff, but it is pretty entertaining. So here is Congressmember Nancy Mace on Fox News.
Well, and this week, one of the things you were calling for is more transparency with regard to what we used to call UFOs. I know they have a fancy new name. I want to play a little bit of back and forth from the hearing. You have witnesses who say the government has remains of crashes, and that's not all. Here's a bit of that.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Okay, some serious allegations that raised a lot of eyebrows. Do you believe them? And do you think the government has an obligation to be transparent with all of this information, whatever it may be?
Well, the Oversight Committee on Wednesday, we had 3 very credible witnesses, a former intelligence officer, a retired military, retired pilots who'd seen things they could not explain. And what we learned on Wednesday, because this really isn't about little green men, this is about the federal government laundering your tax dollars, paying for programs that none of us in Congress are aware of, let alone you, the taxpayer. And you have the right to know what's really going on.
Isn't this kind of about little green men? I mean, the whistleblower says, or the alleged whistleblower says, that the government is in possession of non-human remains.
Yeah.
Sounds like little green men to me, or little green something, or the
Yeah,
point
but
is
like MLK
non-human
said,
something.
we should be judging men by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe that's what that's probably what she's hearkening back to.
With more questions than answers, because a lot of the information that was shared can't be shared in a public setting. So a lot of it might have to, at the next hearing, be in a private setting in a SCIF, which is frustrating. But I want to be transparent with the American people with everything that we learn from these hearings.
Yes, please do. Okay, you mentioned the issue of abortion. We've talked about this. You don't think the GOP...
I mean, one thing I will say is that I do think that if there were like evidence of convincing evidence of UFOs or whatever we're calling it now, wouldn't the government be very excited about revealing it? Because that would be such a, like, what better way to get funding for the military?
Yeah, well, and that's what I think they're doing. There's certainly, it's a big boost for Space Force, for example, to say that there might be aliens out there. But also, again, if this guy really was revealing classified information, I think he'd not be allowed to speak before Congress. I think he'd be in prison.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm skeptical myself, but
yeah,
I've long been skeptical of alien claims, and maybe I'm not open.
Well, I don't want to give it away, but as you all, for people who watch Thursday Throwdown, you'll also realize why Aaron has a bit of a conflict of interest. Yeah, which you can find out about on our Thursday Throwdown now.
That is true. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
All righty. Well, this has been another great episode, another great Monday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for spending the last day of my birthday month with me.
We say goodbye to another Katie Halper birthday month, and we count down to the next one.
Yeah, count to the next one. And no Colin this week. Sorry.
All right.
Next week.
So we'll be back with our regular episode on Friday. And if you sign up at usefulidiots.substack.com or usefulidiots.locals.com, you can get the Thursday Throwdown, which drops every Thursday.
Yeah, and extended interview. Yeah.
That's right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.